So when you picture a high-stakes bank heist, what comes to mind? Like, I really want you to visualize it for a second.
Oh, I mean, if you're anything like most people, it's straight out of Hollywood.
Right, exactly. You're probably pulling from, like, a lifetime of these action tropes,
Right.
screeching tires on wet asphalt.
Oh, yeah, and the frantic shootouts with the automatic weapons.
Yeah. And there's always that sweaty hacker screaming into a headset that they just need more time.
Right, always. And inevitably, there's this massive dose of just dumb luck to pull the whole thing off.
Exactly. Like, the anti-heroes always seem to make it out by the skin of their teeth because, I don't know, someone tripped at the exact right moment or a guard just happened to look the wrong way.
It's a very specific cultural mythology, really. It's built entirely on adrenaline and chaos, which, makes for fantastic cinema because chaos creates visual tension.
Yeah, of course.
But that cinematic tension is fundamentally disconnected from the reality of professional operations. Like,
Yeah.
chaos is the absolute last thing a true professional wants. In a high-stakes environment, chaos is basically just another word for failure.
Exactly. And today, we are shattering that cinematic myth completely. We're looking at the anatomy of what's called a perfect window, and we're pulling this from a really fascinating stack of sources centered around Amanda Park's thriller, Night Rain on Pendleton Pike.
Such a great book.
It really is. And we have video breakdowns of the heist mechanics from the sources, excerpts from the text, and even the visual cover art to kind of analyze. So our mission for you today, for this deep dive, is to dissect the methods of two elite operators in this story. They're known only as ACE in Maine.
Right.
And we really want to show you how a flawless operation is actually constructed, like from the ground up.
And we really need to establish our core theme right out of the gate here because it kind of dictates everything that follows. This deep dive is not a story about explosive action.
No, definitely not.
Yeah, if you are tuning in waiting for a car chase, you are going to be disappointed. Instead, this is it's a masterclass in extreme patience, meticulous preparation, and just the total ruthless elimination of luck.
Yeah, ruthless is the word.
In the world of Ace in Maine, if you have to rely on luck at any point, you've already lost control of the operation.
So true. So to really understand how they pull off the action inside the vault, we basically have to start long before anyone ever sets foot near the bank.
Oh, months before.
Right? We have to rewind the clock 6 months. The story places us in this sweltering, totally abandoned rail yard office on the south side of Indianapolis, and this is where the true foundation of the operation is laid.
And the text uses this setting brilliantly, actually, to introduce our two operators and their contrasting skill sets.
Yeah, the physical environment of that rail yard office is just crucial. It's hot, it's dusty, it's really oppressive, and right in the middle of it you have Maine.
Right, Maine. He represents the muscle and the logistics. He's described as this large, imposing figure, but the text makes it really clear he isn't just some brute.
No, not at all.
He is the quartermaster. He's the one securing the safe houses, managing all the physical gear, and kind of acting as the interface with their underworld contacts.
Right, and contrasting with Maine's huge physical presence, you have Ace.
Ace is fascinating. She's the technical architect. She's sort of the philosopher of this duo.
Yeah, absolutely.
When we first meet them in this dusty office, the author gives us this highly specific image. Ace is sitting in a single beam of sunlight, and she's using these fine-tipped tweezers to meticulously reassemble a microscopic brass gear for a mechanical timer.
Just such a great visual.
It really is. That single image tells you everything you need to know about her baseline psychology. In this chaotic, super uncomfortable environment, she is entirely focused on microscopic precision.
It perfectly sets up the central conflict of this opening sequence, too. Because Maine brings news from a contact they have up in Chicago, a broker who is going to help them launder the money once the heist is actually complete.
Right.
And this broker, he wants to rush the timeline. He wants to execute the job quickly so they can beat this autumn auditing cycle at the bank.
Yeah, he's getting impatient.
Exactly. The broker is pushing them, essentially operating on the logic that time is money, right? Every day they wait is a day they could be out there profiting. But Ace just flatly refuses to accelerate the timeline.
She doesn't even look up from her tweezers when she rejects the demand. It's so cold.
Ice cold.
And her reasoning is based on a very specific vulnerability she has identified at this regional bank node on Pendleton Pike. Basically, her research shows that this specific branch drops its primary encryption layer for precisely 180 seconds.
Just 3 minutes.
Just 3 minutes. And this only happens on the third Thursday of every month.
I actually want to pause on that 180-second window for a second, because when you first read that, it sounds almost too convenient, like a video game mechanic or something.
It does, yeah.
But the text actually explains the real mechanics behind it. The branch isn't just turning off its security for fun. It's executing a standard maintenance cycle to sync its massive data ledgers with the central treasury.
Right, it's an infrastructure bottleneck.
Exactly. They're pushing such a massive amount of encrypted data over this really old legacy physical network that the system literally cannot handle both the data transfer and the primary security encryption simultaneously. Like, it has to momentarily drop the shield to push the data through.
And that is a critical detail because it grounds the fiction in real-world infrastructure problems. Like, legacy banking systems often operate on these mainframes built decades ago,
Right.
and they're trying to communicate with modern cloud-based treasuries.
Right.
So Ace isn't exploiting some magical Hollywood backdoor. She has found a structural bottleneck in the bank's own architecture.
So to hit this 3-minute bottleneck, ACE commits them to 24 weeks of preparation. 6 full months.
Half a year.
Half a year. They're going to spend half a year mapping everything. The text, it lists the guard transit times, the local law enforcement patrol routes, the specific model of every single camera housing within a 3-block radius, and even the street drainage capacities of the surrounding grid.
Which is just insane level of detail.
Totally insane. And Maine just agrees and goes off to secure a safe house near Zionsville. But reading this, I've got to say, I found myself sympathizing with the Chicago broker a little bit.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, okay, let's unpack this. To commit to 6 months of prep for a 3-minute window of action, it feels like an Olympic sprinter training for 4 years for a 9-second race, but, with federal prison on the line.
It does seem disproportionate at first glance, I'll give you that.
Exactly. Like, in the criminal underworld, isn't time literally money? By waiting 24 weeks, aren't Ace and Maine exposing themselves to a million variables changing?
You'd think so.
The guard could quit, the bank could upgrade its servers, the police could totally change their patrol routes. Just waiting seems like the ultimate risk.
It's a completely natural reaction to view time as a liability, especially in a high-stakes scenario like that. We're all conditioned to think speed equals efficiency.
Right.
But Ace's response to the broker's complaint completely flips that conventional wisdom on its head. She delivers what I think is one of the most defining lines in the whole source material. She says, time is a construct for people who lack discipline.
Wow. That line really just stops you in your tracks.
It forces you to look at the different realities these characters inhabit.
Yeah.
Think about the broker up in Chicago. He is looking at a ledger.
Right, he's safe.
Exactly. To him, this operation is just numbers on a spreadsheet. If a variable shifts and the heist fails, the broker just loses a potential payday. He's insulated in this nice office hundreds of miles away. But for Ace and Maine, the reality of a failed operation is a 20-year federal sentence in a maximum security penitentiary.
Yeah, Maine even laughs and notes that the broker doesn't see the steel.
The literal iron bars of a cell, right? The broker is essentially playing a video game, but Ace and Maine are playing Russian roulette.
That's a great way to put it.
So to address that idea that waiting 6 months exposes them to more variables, Ace's philosophy is actually the exact opposite.
How so?
Well, by taking 24 weeks, they aren't passively waiting for variables to change. They are actively mapping the variables so exhaustively that they lock them down. They are studying the ecosystem until it becomes this fixed blueprint.
Okay, I see.
And this establishes our foundational takeaway for the listener today. True professional execution means reality has no choice but to bend to your parameters. You don't rush in and just hope the vault is open.
Yeah.
You study the mechanics of the universe around that vault until, with absolute certainty, how every single atom is going to behave when you walk through the door.
Right, they aren't gambling at all. They are systematically rigging the casino before they even step onto the floor.
Right.
Which honestly transitions us perfectly from the macro planning phase to the micro execution on the night of the breach. Because they've spent 6 months observing. And now they actually have to act.
Yeah, the rubber meets the road.
Right. And what I found fascinating is that the very first obstacle they face isn't like a high-tech laser grid or a biometric scanner. It's human habit.
Because the human element is always the most volatile and, ironically, the most predictable component of any security system.
The sources actually include the cover art for the thriller, which gives us this incredibly visceral aesthetic for this moment. It's this torrential downpour in Indiana. Like, You can practically smell the wet asphalt and the ozone in the
Oh
air.
yeah, it's very atmospheric.
The neon sign of the 24-hour Pendleton diner is glowing red and amber through all the rain, reflecting off the slick pavement. And Ace and Maine are standing outside the bank's perimeter, just illuminated by that glow. Maine is wearing these tactical gloves, holding a physical map. And Ace is beside him, perfectly still, holding a specialized set of keys.
It just creates this palpable scent of atmosphere. After 6 months in that dusty, hot rail yard office dealing in pure theory, they are now stepping into the wet, cold, physical reality of the operation.
And the reality of their first threat is a graveyard shift security guard. Maine has mapped this guy's exterior patrol down to the actual second. The guard has a strict 8-minute rotation around the perimeter of the bank, but Maine noticed a deviation in that pattern.
A tiny little deviation.
Right, at exactly 2:05 a.m., without fail, this guard takes a smoke break by the loading dock.
It's just a tiny, mundane detail, a physiological dependency on nicotine.
Right, and during this specific, totally predictable window, while the guard is physically out of sight and mentally distracted, Ace makes her move. She connects a heavy briefcase to a maintenance port hidden beneath the keypad of the side door.
Yeah.
And the text notes this briefcase contains an industrial-grade frequency scrambler, and she uses it to initiate a digital handshake to bypass the building's third encryption layer. And she has exactly 10 seconds to get a green light. Just 10. If she fails, a silent alarm triggers at the local precinct before the door even unlatches. But she gets it. The light turns green, the door clicks open, and they slip inside.
And they occupy that loading zone only after the guard is committed to his break, using his own timeline to render him completely useless as a security measure.
Now, the text throws around terms like frequency scrambler and digital handshake, which honestly can sound a bit like hacker movie magic.
It can, yeah.
But my understanding from the source breakdown is that a digital handshake isn't just, plugging in a cable and pressing a bypass button. The keypad port is constantly sending out a signal, essentially asking, "Who are you?"
Right, it's a verification ping.
Exactly. And it expects a highly specific encrypted response, a call and response. The scrambler isn't breaking the door down physically. It's rapidly cycling through thousands of cryptographic responses in a fraction of a second, basically guessing the secret knock until the door's computer recognizes the right mathematical string.
That is an excellent breakdown of the mechanism. She is forcing her machine to speak the bank's language faster than the bank's security protocols can even realize it's a forced conversation.
It's incredible. But, it brings up a major point of friction for me regarding their reliance on that guard.
Oh.
Yeah, it's like slipping into a movie theater without a ticket while the teenage usher is distracted by a text message. Except instead of stealing a seat for a movie, you're risking decades in a federal prison.
Right, the stakes are a bit higher.
Just a bit. So I really have to question the reliance on a human being's nicotine addiction here. A computer system, like that digital handshake, does what it's programmed to do. It has a rigid mathematical logic. But a human could just decide to skip their break.
That's true.
What if it's raining too hard that night? What if he promised his wife he was finally trying to quit smoking? Doesn't the human element introduce exactly the kind of chance Ace was supposedly trying to eliminate?
You are identifying the central paradox of physical security right there. It is absolutely valid to question the reliability of human behavior in a vacuum. Like, humans are messy.
Very.
However, we aren't looking at human behavior in a vacuum. We have to look at how humans behave within highly structured, restrictive environments.
Like the bank environment.
Exactly. The bank's security protocol is intensely rigid. The guard is mandated to walk that perimeter, to be awake at 2:00 a.m., to follow a specific path on a continuous 8-minute loop.
Over and over again.
Right. And when you force a human being into a rigidly repetitive, low-stimulation environment like a graveyard shift in the pouring rain, they will instinctively seek out micro-routines to break the monotony and reassert some sense of control over their night.
Oh, wow. Like they need an anchor point.
That's the perfect term, anchor point. The smoke break at 2:05 a.m. isn't just about the nicotine. It's his psychological anchor point. It's his ritual. If it's raining, he will find a dry spot by the dock, but he will take that break. Ace and Maine understand that these rigid institutional routines, which are ostensibly designed to protect a facility by ensuring constant patrol, actually become the facility's greatest vulnerability. The routine conditions the guard to operate entirely on autopilot.
That totally makes sense when you frame it as systemic conditioning. Like, they aren't overpowering the guard. They aren't knocking him out or distracting him with a thrown rock, which would just introduce a ton of chaos.
No, absolutely not.
They are using his own psychological need for routine to step entirely outside of his awareness. They are weaponizing his predictability against him.
They don't have to defeat the guard. They just have to ensure they are not occupying the same physical space at the exact moment he chooses to briefly disengage from his environment. It is a flawless circumvention of the human layer.
Which means they are now inside. The side door clicks shut behind them, and it just cuts off the sound of the rain completely. They've slipped past the human element, but now they are facing the bank's automated nervous system, and they are doing it in almost complete darkness.
Yeah. This is where the physical environment of the narrative shifts dramatically.
Right, the sensory details the author uses here are just fantastic. Outside, it was loud, wet, and visually chaotic with the neon and the storm. But inside, the sources describe the air smelling of stale paper and industrial carpet.
Yeah.
It is dead silent, illuminated only by the eerie green glow of the emergency exit signs.
It creates this incredibly claustrophobic tension.
It really does. And they have to wait. This is the part of the operation that honestly stressed me out the most. They're standing in the dark, and they have to wait for the building's power grid to drop at exactly 2:15 a.m.
Because that is the 180-second window Ace identified 6 months ago.
Right. During this 3-minute window, the primary power cycles down to allow that massive data sync to the central treasury, and the physical backup generators take a moment to kind of spin up and take over the security grid.
It is the ultimate vulnerability of physical infrastructure.
Yeah.
Power handoffs are never perfectly instantaneous. There is always a mechanical delay.
And here is the kicker. If they are not standing at the main security console deep inside the building, by the time that power cycle completes and the backup generators kick in, the marble floor they are standing on arms itself.
Yeah.
The text details that there are hidden pressure plates under the marble.
Which is a brilliant detail by the author. Why pressure plates? Because motion sensors can be fooled by temperature changes or small animals, and cameras can be blinded. But weight on a floor is an undeniable physical fact. It is just a brutal binary security measure.
Exactly. If those plates go live, any weight triggers the secondary security traps. It becomes a literal minefield. So the moment the primary power drops, they are forced into this 60-second operational sprint down a pitch-black corridor. They cannot move a second too early, or the primary cameras catch them, and they cannot arrive a second too late, or the secondary floor plates trap them.
The building's internal infrastructure is now dictating the exact physical rhythm of their bodies.
Yeah.
They are entirely subordinate to the machine's timeline.
And they make the sprint perfectly. They reach the heavy oak doors of the security office. Ace sits down at the main terminal, bathing her face in the blue light of the monitor. Maine stands guard by the hallway leading to the vault doors.
Right.
And suddenly, Maine hears this terrifying sound. It's a heavy, metallic clanking echoing through the walls from the vault down the hall. The vault's automated steel deadbolts are cycling early.
Because they're moving to verify the physical integrity of the seal before the power swap actually finishes.
This was another technical detail that really grounded the story for me. The machine isn't just waiting to turn on, it's actively checking its own armor.
Right.
It wants to ensure the massive steel door is perfectly seated in its frame before it hands control over to the backup system. If the deadbolts don't extend fully, it means something is obstructing the door, and the system triggers an alarm.
Exactly. It's a localized physical diagnostic running concurrently with the digital power cycle.
So Maine hears this clanking, and he warns Ace. And this is where she executes a maneuver that seems, frankly, totally counterintuitive.
It really does.
She is sitting at the terminal with her scrambler connected. She doesn't send a kill command. She doesn't stop the deadbolts from cycling. She just sits there watching a progress bar on the screen load. 85%, 90%, 95%.
It's pure nerve.
She lets the massive steel bolts slide almost all the way into their housings. She waits for a microscopic 2-second delay between the mechanical integrity check and the final digital hard lock, and then she injects a spoofed authorization code.
It is a breathtaking moment of cyber-physical synergy.
I really had to wrap my head around the timing of this. It's like walking up to a nightclub bouncer who is intensely scrutinizing your fake ID under a black light,
Yeah.
but instead of snatching the ID back and running away, you stand perfectly still.
Right.
You wait for the exact millisecond the bouncer blinks, and you slap a VIP entry stamp on his hand. So when he opens his eyes a millisecond later, he looks at his own hand and thinks he already approved you.
That's a perfect analogy.
But my question is about the actual necessity of that risk. Like, if Ace has bypassed the firewall and has total access to the security terminal, why play this terrifying game of chicken with the deadbolts?
Because,
Like, why not just shut the whole automated system down, kill the power to the vault doors entirely the moment she sits down, and take their time?
well, because shutting down the system is the absolute worst thing you can do in modern cyber-physical security. Oh, yeah. The sources specifically detail the mechanics of anomaly detection in these high-tier vaults. These systems aren't just looking for unauthorized access like an invalid password. They're constantly monitoring the state of their own physical hardware.
Okay, so if Ace had manually halted those massive deadbolts in the middle of their cycle, what happens?
The software would have instantly recognized that physical anomaly. It expects the bolt to move from point A to point B in a very specific time frame. If they stop halfway, the system registers a critical failure.
Oh, I see.
And the immediate programmed response to that anomaly isn't to ask for a password, it is to initiate an irrevocable hard lock. The vault would literally become a steel tomb. You cannot fight the system's defensive current head-on because the current is too strong and the failsafes are too brutal.
So it's like the machine saying, hey, my arm just stopped moving, someone is holding it, shut everything down.
Precisely. What ACE executes here is a form of digital Aikido.
Digital Aikido.
Yeah. In martial arts, Aikido is built on the principle of redirecting your opponent's momentum rather than opposing it with brute force. ACE lets the machine execute its own flawless defensive protocol. She lets it feel secure in its routine. And she hijacks the verification process at its most vulnerable microsecond, the tiny gap between the physical action and the digital confirmation.
So you don't break the lock, you trick the lock into believing it has already successfully locked itself, and then, as the authorized user, you just tell it to open.
Exactly.
It is a masterpiece of technical timing.
And it perfectly mirrors how they handled the human guard outside, too. They didn't fight the guard, they used his routine. And here, they don't fight the software, they use its diagnostic routine to bypass it.
So the digital exploit works. The screen flashes white, the system goes dark, and down the hall, the massive circular steel vault door swings outward with this heavy mechanical sigh. They've done it. They have breached the fortress. But reading through the breakdown of what happens next, I realized that the most dangerous enemy isn't the deadbolts or the pressure plates or the guard outside. The most dangerous enemy is actually waiting inside the vault. And it's their own human nature.
Yes. This is undoubtedly the most profound psychological element of the entire operation. It elevates the story from a technical procedural to a study of human discipline.
Right. So they step inside the vault, and the environmental shift hits them again. The air is freezing cold, heavily climate controlled to preserve the paper currency. Maine immediately goes to work. He fires up a high-speed pneumatic cutter. Sparks are flying everywhere in the dim light, and he slices through the soft steel hinges of the central currency cages.
Very efficient.
And inside those cages are neat sequential blocks of crisp, uncirculated bills from an early regional treasury shipment. It is literally millions of dollars sitting right there for the taking, and the clock is ticking down.
Fast.
They have exactly 90 seconds before the auxiliary power fully restores and the alarms go off.
The psychological pressure of that ticking clock is just deafening.
Right. So Maine starts loading these heavy canvas duffel bags with the bricks of cash. But Ace gives him two incredibly strict, non-negotiable commands. First, ignore the lower shelves entirely. The text notes these are rigged with hidden tracker traps.
Which is a fascinating piece of behavioral engineering by the bank, honestly.
I was thinking about that. Like, why put the trackers on the lower shelves? It has to be based on human ergonomics, right?
Absolutely.
If you are rushing, you're panicked, and you're trying to grab as much as possible before a timer runs out, you are going to sweep your arms across the shelves that are easiest to reach, the middle and lower ones. You aren't going to take the time to stretch up for the top shelf.
Exactly. The bank is anticipating the physiological response of a panicked thief and placing their countermeasures exactly where the thief's hands will naturally go.
It's brilliant. So that's her first command. Her second command is even more restrictive. Cap the duffel bags at exactly 40 pounds each.
40 pounds.
And they actually do it. Maine hits the 40-pound limit on his bags, stops filling them, zips them up, and they physically walk away from piles of untraceable cash.
It's hard to imagine doing that.
On the way out, Maine jams the massive vault door with a heavy manual lever to buy themselves roughly 20 minutes of confusion before the arriving police can verify what was actually taken.
It's a flawless exit strategy.
But I am just astounded by this restraint. Like, imagine being in a freezing room filled with millions of dollars. Your adrenaline is spiking. You've spent 6 months planning this. You've risked decades in prison. And you stop stuffing your pockets just because a scale hits a specific arbitrary number.
Yeah.
It's like going to the most incredible, expensive, all-you-can-eat buffet in the world, carefully filling one single plate and walking out the door because you calculated your exact caloric burn for the day.
That's hilarious, but it's very accurate.
So I have to challenge this logic a bit. The text explicitly says the regional treasury shipment landed early, meaning there is significantly more cash in the vault than they originally anticipated. So if the haul is bigger, isn't leaving untraceable cash behind a massive failure to maximize the opportunity? They might literally never get a window like this again.
It feels like a failure to a novice. It feels like a failure to someone driven by emotion, or someone who views success solely through the lens of maximum immediate profit.
Well, sure.
But the text provides a masterful distillation of elite operational psychology here. There is a specific quote in the source material that addresses this exact paradox, and it's honestly the thesis statement of the entire heist. It says, "In a room containing millions in cash, greed becomes its own security measure."
Greed becomes its own security measure. That completely flips the conventional wisdom on its head. Usually you think of security as cameras, guards, and steel doors.
Because that is the physical layer. But the bank relies on the psychological weakness of the intruder as its final, most effective line of defense. The bank actually wants you to take more.
Because taking more slows you down.
Exactly. It's the physics of what the text refers to as escape velocity. When you were sprinting through a dark corridor, dodging pressure plates, trying to outrun an automated power cycle, and anticipating a police response, weight is your absolute worst enemy.
Oh, definitely.
Any weight over that pre-calculated 40-pound limit turns extra profit into a literal physical liability.
It changes the mechanics of how you move.
Precisely. If Maine ignores the rule and loads 60 pounds of cash into his bag, his stride physically shortens. His heart rate spikes higher, his breathing becomes labored, his center of gravity shifts, and his exit is delayed by precious seconds.
Right, and seconds matter here.
In this environment, those seconds are the difference between slipping into the shadows and meeting a police cruiser head-on in the alley. The ultimate takeaway for you, the listener, is the power of overriding emotion with mathematical discipline. True professionals have the ability to prioritize the exit plan and long-term survival over a short-term haul.
Yeah.
They do not let the presence of unexpected abundance alter a meticulously calculated blueprint.
They stick to the math. 40 pounds is 40 pounds, whether there is $100 left on the table or 10 million. They basically conquer their own human nature before it can conquer them.
It is the ultimate expression of Ace's earlier philosophy: discipline over time, discipline over environment, and finally, discipline over self.
So they have the bags, they are back out the side door, slipping back into the freezing torrential rain of the alleyway. The vault is jammed behind them, but their internal countdown is in the single digits.
Cutting it close.
They are mere seconds away from making a clean break into the industrial park. And just as they step into the alley, a city police cruiser suddenly pulls into the mouth of the alleyway.
The worst possible timing.
Its spotlight clicks on and sweeps across the wet brickwork, cutting through the rain right toward them.
After all that planning, all that mathematical perfection, the unpredictable real world violently intrudes.
Exactly. And Maine immediately tenses up. His hand drops to his belt, reaching for a heavy utility tool. His immediate instinct, as the muscle of the operation, is to fight.
Right, his default mode.
Now, the source material notes something crucial here. This cruiser isn't responding to an alarm. The bank is still totally quiet. The alarms haven't tripped yet.
They bought that 20-minute window.
Right. This is just a routine sweep by an officer who is likely looking for shelter from the severe storm or just doing a random neighborhood check. It's a totally random bad luck encounter. But while Maine is ready to go to war and potentially turn a burglary into a shootout, Ace remains perfectly chillingly calm.
Her absolute stillness in that moment is the culmination of the preceding 6 months of work.
Mhm.
She doesn't panic because she has already solved this problem.
She tells Maine they aren't going to run and they aren't going to fight. She just tells him to stand still.
Yeah.
And she is right. The cruiser pauses at the entrance to the alley. The spotlight lingers for a terrifying second. The brake lights flash red against the wet pavement, and then the cop just puts it in reverse, backs out, and drives away.
Scribble.
Why? Because Ace banked on the fact that the civil infrastructure in this specific industrial sector of Pendleton Pike had not been updated since 1992.
This is where that exhaustive mapping phase pays off in a way that feels almost precognitive.
She knew that a rainfall exceeding 2 inches per hour guaranteed a massive backup on the local storm drains. So right at the corner of that alley, hidden in the dark, there was a 6-inch deep pool of standing water in a drainage ditch.
Just a puddle, really.
Yeah, but the police officer, acting on standard human instinct, didn't want to bottom out his cruiser or flood his engine in a deep puddle in the dark. So he simply abandoned the sweep of the alley and stayed on the main paved avenue.
It is a stunning reveal of how deep her preparation actually went. It wasn't just about the bank, it was about the entire ecosystem surrounding the bank.
So they escape with no headlights, navigating purely by memory through the twisting service roads of the industrial park. They completely avoid the interstate detours that the police would naturally set up, and they arrive safely at the Zionsville safe house.
Home free.
They split the take. 40% goes to their Chicago contact in Cicero to clean and route the money offshore, and Ace and Maine split the remaining 60% precisely down the middle.
A clean break.
A perfectly clean break. But I have to push back on this final escape sequence because reading it, it feels a little like cheating the narrative.
How so?
Well, I am mind blown that they mapped the city's plumbing, yes. But how could anyone possibly account for the exact amount of rainfall on a given night? I mean, meteorologists with supercomputers get the weather wrong all the time.
That's a fair point.
Isn't relying on a puddle to stop a police car just a lucky break masquerading as brilliant planning? It feels like the exact kind of luck they claim to hate.
It's a very sharp observation, and it's fascinating how easy it is to confuse environmental exploitation with luck. You are right, no one can predict the exact inch count of rainfall with magical precision weeks in advance. But viewing it as a prediction of the weather is missing the core mechanism of ACE's planning.
Okay.
It's not about predicting the rain, it's about understanding the cascading implications of environmental variables.
Cascading implications. Walk me through that. How does she use a variable she can't even control?
ACE knew a severe storm was coming on the night of the operation. That is standard accessible forecasting. But a novice looks at a storm forecast and says, oh, it's raining, we will get wet, visibility will be bad, maybe the roads will be slick.
Right, surface level stuff.
That is surface level observation. ACE looks at a storm and immediately cross-references it with decades-old civil engineering records. She knows the structural limits of the environment. She knows that if the rain hits a certain threshold, the 1992 drain fails.
I see.
If the drain fails, a physical barrier of water is created. She doesn't need to conjure the rain or control the weather. She just needs to know exactly how the physical world will react to it when it inevitably arrives.
She understands the domino effect of the environment. Like, she knows which dominoes fall when water is added to the equation.
Precisely. To a normal citizen, a flooded street is a nuisance. You complain about the city council, you take a detour, and you move on. But to a prepared operator like ACE, a flooded street is a tactical asset. It is an impenetrable barricade that requires zero manpower to maintain and leaves no physical evidence of tampering whatsoever.
Right.
The police officer's behavior, choosing to back away from the puddle, is dictated entirely by the environment. And because ACE understands the environment better than the officer does, she effectively controls the officer's movements without ever interacting with him.
Wow.
It is not luck. It is the meticulous preparation that turns an unpredictable environmental hazard into a strategic advantage. As the text explicitly states, professional execution is the total elimination of the need to improvise.
Because if you have to improvise, it means you encountered a variable you didn't plan for, and in their world, an unplanned variable equals a prison sentence.
Exactly.
So the outcome of this encounter in the alley wasn't decided in the rain. It was decided 6 months ago in that dusty Ray Yard office when she was reading civil engineering blueprints.
Exactly. The action inside the bank and the escape in the alley was merely the physical performance of a script that had already been perfectly written months in advance.
That is just a phenomenal way to look at problem solving. So, to wrap up this deep dive, let's kind of summarize the incredibly dense takeaways we've pulled from Amanda Park's world for you today. We started by dismantling the Hollywood myth of the frantic, lucky heist, replacing it with the reality of obsessive, microscopic preparation.
Which is so much more interesting.
It really is. We saw that true success is about weaponizing predictability, using a guard's mundane 2.05 AM smoke break to render him completely invisible to the operation. We learned the absolute necessity of practicing extreme restraint, watching Ace and Maine conquer their own human nature by walking away from millions in cash because they understood that greed is a structural trap designed to destroy your physical escape velocity. And finally, we saw how understanding the hidden mechanics of your environment, down to the 1992 plumbing infrastructure, allows you to turn a random storm into an impenetrable shield, basically controlling your adversaries without ever touching them.
It is a radically different way of interacting with reality. It requires you to stop looking at the surface of things and start seeing the underlying architecture of everyday life, the routines, the fail-safes, the infrastructure. And this actually raises an important question, one that I think serves as a perfect final thought for our listeners to mull over long after this discussion ends.
Leave them with it.
The sources today showed us how perfectly predictable routines, whether it's a guard smoke break or a bank's data sync, create massive exploitable vulnerabilities for high-security institutions. But I want you to look closely at your own life. Think about your own 8-minute daily habits. Think about your predictable digital routines, the way you always check your phone at the exact same time, the passwords you reuse, the usual routes you drive to work every single day without even thinking about it. Are the daily routines that you rely on to make your life feel safe, comfortable, and stable actually making you entirely predictable and therefore entirely exposed?
That is a genuinely unsettling thought. It makes you realize that comfort and security are often opposites. Like, are we all just walking an 8-minute rotation, operating on autopilot, waiting for someone who has studied our habits to exploit our 2.05 AM smoke break?
It's very possible.
It's definitely something to think about the next time you find yourself blindly following your own routine. Just remember, if you want to survive the muddy, unpredictable waters of life, you can't rely on luck. You have to map the variables before the storm hits. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Stay curious, stay a little unpredictable, and we will see you next time.